What is the strangest mystery that is still unsolved? The lost A-bomb off the coast of America, which the US government said not to worry about in the 50s and tried to cover up, was dumped in the ocean in an aviation accident and it's still lost to this day, 100x more powerful than what was dropped in Japan. The Circleville Letters. In 1976, residents of the small city south of Columbus, Ohio began receiving handwritten sinister and graphic letters. Each letter included secret and dark details about their personal lives. One resident received a ton of letters, accusing her of various unsavory acts. The author warned the resident that he had been keeping an eye on her home, as well as her comings and goings. The resident was horrified and tried to keep the letters a secret until her husband began receiving them. The attacks on the family continued, with large posters appearing around town spreading rumors about their 12-year-old child. One day in 1977, the husband left the house after receiving a call from who he thought was writing the letters. A few minutes later, the husband was found dead at the end of the street, dead behind the wheel. The sheriff had ruled it a homicide when he realized that a single shot had been fired before the accident, but there was no evidence that the husband was shot at the site. The sheriff found the husband was twice the legal limit and ruled it a drunk driving accident. The letters began once again, this time accusing the sheriff of covering up the true nature of the death. The letters also accused the sheriff of mishandling an investigation into the county coroner who had been accused of other grotesque acts. The harassment continued, this time with signs along the road, and in 1983, the original resident who had been accused of having an affair pulled over to remove a sign. During the effort to remove the sign, she discovered a box was attached and inside of it was a small pistol. The gun was part of a booby trap designed to fire when the sign was removed. Paul Fressauer was arrested and given 25 years. But one small problem, the letter writing continued even after Fressauer was put in jail. In a new batch of letters, the author had promised to dig up the grave of a deceased baby and mail the bones to the police in the case of another potential affair turned murder. Hundreds of residents continued to receive personal letters until 1994 when everything stopped. This dude got lost in the catacombs, and they found camera footage of his journey, but at some point he drops the camera and just starts to run. As far as I know, nobody has found out WTF happened to him. He probably panicked, heard a rat, something fell, and ran in an intentionally erratic pattern because he thought something was chasing him. Then he got lost on his way back. I remember seeing this video on YouTube of this guy who went to explore an old Civil War era mine in the US. He reached the end and made his way back, and about halfway through really loud whispers suddenly came from where the back of the mine and he bolted out of there. Really spooky and unexplained until someone in the comments noticed the whispers followed the exact cadence of a sentence he spoke about 5 seconds ago. So it probably was his own voice that got morphed and echoed back to him in a weird way. Spooky AF though. Another one is Colonel Philip Shu's death. On April 16, 2003, 54-year-old Colonel Philip Shu left his Texas home and headed to work. 2 hours later, he was found dead in his car, an apparent victim of a car crash. The car was caved in on the driver's side and Philip suffered major head trauma as a result. He was killed instantly. This is where it gets weird. Philip had a tear in his t-shirt under his fatigues. There, they could see a 6-inch vertical gash in his chest. Above the entrance to the 6 inches gash were at least 5 scratch marks, which the autopsy report said were consistent with hesitant marks. Both his had been removed with surgical precision. The 5th digit on his left hand had been amputated and his left ear had been lacerated down to the bone. Duct tape was dangling from both of his wrists and the top of his boots. It was ruled a suicide. Perhaps not the absolute strangest, but in March of 2020, the Windows market share for the long discontinued Windows XP skyrocketed by about 10% in China. This spike in Windows XP use for just 1 month is for unknown reasons. Some people think the Chinese government could have been looking for security flaws in the operating system to take advantage of. After all, lots of sensitive government equipment still runs on Windows XP. The suicide of Lavina Johnson, a black female U.S. Army private who was found shot to death inside a burning tent with a broken nose, black eyes, broken teeth, raped and acid burns on her genitals in July 2005. U.S. Army ruled her death a suicide. There was a whole podcast episode about this on Crime Junkies and it seriously swayed me into no longer looking into going into the military. What a disgrace. You can't serve your country honorably without potentially falling victim to being raped and or murdered by your own comrades. This infuriates me. Women in the U.S. Army are more likely to be raped by their fellow officers than killed in combat. The Miyazawa family. Just listened to the Case File podcast on this and it has my mind blown. Someone entered the family home around 11:30 p.m., Killed everyone, ate some ice cream, took a nap, pooped and didn't flush, changed clothes and left like 8 hours after the crime. 20 years on and we don't know who or why. The Overtoun Bridge. It's a bridge in Scotland where dogs always unexplainably jump off. It's very strange and nobody knows for certain why they do this. Dogs who survived reportedly walked back up and jumped off again. They even had to put up a warning sign to keep your dog on a leash and to watch them. A lot of theories say maybe it's because of certain scents or animals down below, but most people have disagreed with this theory. It's weird. Edit. In reality, I've done more research thanks to some comments, and it seems like people have romanticized this to make it creepier than it actually is. I don't know exactly what to believe since there's so much misinformation out there, but I'll just believe the articles who've done the most research for now. They say it was most likely not hundreds of dogs, because they can't find reports of that many jumping off like the legend says. It was only around 6, so it's likely that I was misinformed like so many other people were and it's not actually a huge phenomenon lol. But it's still sad and a bit weird that 6 dogs jumped off. I remember that a new theory, which is supported by most experts, has something to do with the bridge's shape and resonant frequency creating sounds only audible to dogs. These sounds mess with the dog's perception and can drive them a bit mad. The Salish Sea Feet or the Mad Axe Man of New Orleans. The Salish Sea Feet are the approximately 20 dismembered feet found in or around British Columbia or Washington, USA. The feet sometimes are found still inside of shoes. No one knows how they got there or where they came from. Over the course of the last 13 years, the authorities have ruled out foul play. The Mad Axe Man of New Orleans ran rampant in 1918 and 1919. He murdered 6 people, usually those of Italian descent, with axes or straight razors. In March of 1919, he sent a lengthy letter from hottest hell that was pretty nonsensical, but the most relevant paragraphs read, "Now, to be exact, at 12:15, earthly time, on next Tuesday night, I am going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I am going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then, so much the better for you people. One thing is certain and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it out on that specific Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe." There were no murders that night because every dance hall in NOLA was filled to capacity. Clearly just a jazz musician who was really down on his luck and was willing to do anything to get a gig. Here's a meme for you to enjoy while you're subscribing to our channel. We'll have new videos for you every day, so stay tuned. The whereabouts of the last Gestapo chief Heinrich Müller. The last verified sighting of him was in Berlin roughly 3 days before it fell. He had stated he knew full well what the Russians did to prisoners and he had no intentions of being captured. As chief of the Gestapo, he more than likely had access to foreign documents as well as ways to replicate them. Both the CIA and the KGB spent time looking for him, but no trace has ever been found. The Tamam Shud case, also known as the mystery of the Somerton Man, is an unsolved case of an unidentified man found dead at 6:30 a.m., December 1, 1948, on the Somerton Park beach, just south of Adelaide, South Australia. The case is named after the Persian phrase Tamam Shud, meaning ended or finished, which was printed on a scrap of paper found months later in the fob pocket of the man's trousers. The scrap had been torn from the final page of a copy of Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, authored by 12th century poet Omar Khayyam. Tamam was misspelt as Taman in many early reports, and this error has often been repeated, leading to confusion about the name in the media. Def Cold War spice. No doubt, it was around the time of nuclear testing in South Australia. All the stuff they found on him and at the train station being untraceable / having no identification tags. The book was probably part a cipher. They may exhume him soon. The main dude at Adelaide Uni studying the case married into the family suspected of being associated with the man. It's a weird world. Testing was several years after he was found dead, but the spy theory involves a uranium mine in the Woomera testing range. The suicide of Ellen Greenberg. 27 stab wounds in different areas of the body. Edit. 20 stab wounds, 27 was her age at the time of death. Thanks for correcting you /Kmart4165. Suicide stabbings are so ridiculous. There's a case from Denmark in 2003 where a woman was found dead by her husband, who called the police and said she had killed herself. She was on the bedroom floor next to a broken lamp. Her wristwatch was torn off and her pulled down, and she had 179 stab wounds. Because it was a Sunday, they had to call in a criminal assistant on his off day, and he deemed it a suicide, because she had a history of depression. That guy who ran away from the airport hopped the fence and was never seen again. The guy's motive for shooting up all those people in Vegas. This one has bothered me for quite some time as well. The guy had no criminal record, no history of mental illness, no known religious or political affiliations, was financially well off, and no known relationship issues. Very strange indeed. I think there was some weird with his family though, no? His dad was an FBI wanted criminal who basically abandoned him, and one of his brothers got caught with child and had booby-trapped his house with explosives. I think it's safe to say he had relationship issues within his family. Some strange going on there. Asha degree. Girl leaves her house in the middle of the night during a storm and disappeared. The only problem is that she was terrified of thunder and lightning and had no motive for leaving because her home life was fine. Then her clothes and backpack were found a year later in an abandoned construction site. Is this the girl wearing all white that they think is buried in a parking lot? No, she ran away during the early hours of the morning during a massive storm. She was spotted on the side of the highway but ran into the woods when anyone stopped. She had apparently packed a bag with some clothes and books, which was found buried miles away from her home. She seems to have spent some time in an old shed, evidenced by candy wrappers. Fascinating case, and one that keeps me up at night. Unfortunately, the case did not generate much popular interest at the time. Who was Perseus? From 1943 to 1946, the Soviet Union had a high-level spy in the Manhattan Project, codenamed Perseus. This spy was a scientist at the White Sands missile testing site in NM, and the main research facilities in Los Alamos. Perseus saw pretty much the entire project start to finish, giving the Russians everything they needed to get to work on their own bomb. The fact that they were able to do so within 4 years of the end of World War II, when their nations was still devastated, is proof positive that Perseus helped a great deal. And to top it all off, Perseus was never caught or positively identified. That we know of. I don't think the US government would be keen to share the name of the person that sold out all their advancements to Russia. That's right, it could be embarrassing, or the US could have assassinated him, or the US could have turned him and work as a double agent. There are lots of different, but valid reasons why officials may not release Perseus's identity. Not to mention that this was decades ago, and the very people who organized whatever happened may have destroyed enough records to cover this up permanently. There's a chance that despite US officials knowing who Perseus was back then, they may have covered it up so well that US officials today don't know who Perseus was. It's all very fascinating. There's also the chance that US officials simply never found out because Perseus was such a pro. The 1987 Arkansas murders of Don Henry and Kevin Ives, and every single possible witness surrounding them, like Keith McCaskill, who claimed to be on the tracks that night. He talked to the special prosecutor about what he saw, then realized the prosecutor was dirty. After coming forth as a witness, he began saying goodbye to his loved ones and planned his own funeral arrangements. Shortly after, he was stabbed 113 times. The Hinterkaifeck murders, super creepy, and the fact that there was evidence the murderers were in the house watching the family for a while before killing them just totally freaks me out. Edit, thanks for the silver. First time award recipient here. And gold too. Happy almost cake day to me. Are you familiar with the book The Man from the Train? The writers think that it was a serial killer, German guy, that killed a bunch of families in the United States before going back to Germany.